Welcome to the Independent Characters, episode 228. This is Carl.
This is Josh.
And this show, Josh, is sponsored by Greg Osborne and Tristan O'Mara. O'Mara? I think O'Mara.
Yeah.
I'm giving it my best, Tristan. Anyway, thank you so much for supporting us through our Patreon. We very much appreciate it. This episode, we have a little bit of a smorgasbord of things we want to talk about. We're going to have a couple guests on later, Nick Froese and Adam Abramowicz. Nick is going to talk about kind of our main topic of the show, which is battle reports and kind of what they're doing. As you know, I just went up to Vancouver recently and played in a battle report with the PlayOn Tabletop guys, so I want to talk about that a little bit more than I did last episode. And then we're going to have Nick on to talk about their production and everything that's involved there, because we did an episode on battle reports back in I want to say episode 67 or something along those lines. Yeah, 67. I'm right.
Yeah, a while back. Yeah,
yeah, which is quite a long time ago. And technology has changed since then. A lot of things have changed since we came out with that episode. And boy, I got to tell you, I was kind of blown away by what I saw up in Vancouver. So I wanted to dig into that a little bit for those people who are interested in kind of what goes on behind the scenes, but also may be interested in doing that kind of thing for themselves. So we'll talk.
As a video guy, I can't wait to pick his brain about all the ins and outs of just behind the scenes. Not that I want to take anything to that level, but it's just fascinating to see the production involved.
Okay, so let's just leap into Elite Choice. And why don't you go ahead and go first, Josh?
Yeah, absolutely. So for this go around, I went with Casey Roberts and their Death Watch Outriders, and complete with Chaplain on bike.
Yeah.
And the reason I went for this one is it's because I just finished building 5 of them, 5 bikes. I already had a couple built, and then my Chaplain last episode I was talking about. But what I really liked is these are Death Watch specifically. So they all have the Death Watch shoulder pad in there. The blacks are painted a really nice, it's the kind of the shades of blue and gray leading up to black, so it's not black painted as black.
That's really what Caleb was. That's what Caleb was trying to get me to do, and I'm not going back to it.
Yeah. With the blue great. Specifically.
Yeah, it looks so good.
Yeah. And then to complement and contrast that black, the red of the bolters on the bikes themselves and the red on the chain swords just really pop with some beautiful contrast on those bikes. Just nice detailing, nice clean lines. It's a very muted color palette, so the red really stands out in contrast to that, and it's just really nicely well done and kind of was inspiring for me. Again, with Sharks, it's a muted kind of gray palette, but then I'll get a lot of red coming in with the blood effects that I like to do with all my chain swords and things like that, with the gore and that. So it was just, for me, it was just inspiring to kind of, and motivating for how I'm going to be painting my Outrider squad.
Yeah. I think they're very grimdark. They're very cool looking. I went with, and I'm going to butcher your name, and I'm so sorry. I'm going to do my best. Aditya Mahalingam Dhingra is his name, and his Chaos War Dog. And he's actually, I went back and searched under his name after I copied and pasted it, because that's a long name, and saw a previous post where he was working on his War Dogs quite a while ago, and he's gotten them to this point, at least this one. The one thing that I'm really torn on is the color palette of the glow effect on the model, but I have to say the kit bashing,
really pops as is.
It does pop, and the kit bashing of the model, and it's clearly done with great skill. The paint job is premium. I mean, it looks so good. I'm not sold on that color, but
for those of you listening versus watching, it's a very kind of bright, hot pink as an OSL effect on that one.
To represent the heated weapons and such. But and the skull, the head. I mean, it's a wild looking model though. It's wild looking.
I love the kind of caution stripe built into the palette, or the kind of color palette on the top carapace bit.
Yep.
And then the I think the pink does complement that yellow and black really well, but
It does.
the rest of the model it is quite bright, but
Yeah.
it also gives it some nice contrast, and
it's not.
Really.
I think
really cool
that's
pose.
just an aesthetic choice. Like, it either works for you, it doesn't. For me, it's that's not the color I would have chosen. But again, I'm not the best. Who am I to judge this? But you talk about the hazard stripes. Like if you look at them close up, like you can see the amount of detail work he's done on that stuff. It looks fantastic. It looks fantastic.
Crisp.
This
beautiful weathering, great pose. Yeah, really cool model.
It's super creepy looking too. Like it would be like it's very John Blanche, kind of creepy looking. So
the detached like floating head on that is really
so
nice
wild. It's so wild. So yeah, great stuff. I love it. Fantastic work to both of you, and thank you so much for sharing your work with us. So let's launch into hobby progress right off the bat. Josh, we are recording kind of a short time after our last recording, but not only that, there was Thanksgiving weekend in between this, so I didn't do a whole lot of hobby, but I did do a little bit.
Same.
Well, look, let's talk purchases. All right, the stupid Legions Imperialis.
Yeah.
I purchased the core rule book. I'm not ready to go both feet in at this point, until I find employment.
You are.
Until I find employment, I'm not willing to jump in right now. But I do have to say I've gotten excited about it. And I didn't want to. I told you I wasn't going to do this. Like if you guys go back several episodes, I'm like, I'm not doing it. And now, you know what it was for me was the Titanicus event we went to. That really primed my pump for, oh boy, I'm in.
And they've already talked about the next event that they're doing up in Chico in
I saw.
April, going to incorporate Legions Imperialis as well for players who don't just want to play Titanicus. Well, they have options for both.
I saw. So I finally completed my Ash Waste Nomad squad using speed paints and contrast paints. Got my Ash Waste Nomads done. It's interesting. When I started them, it was kind of one of the first times I had done the whole slap chop method. And using that method now, I would have done things just a little bit different. Like I've gotten a little bit better at it. But overall, very happy with the results. I think it works well with the basing I did for them.
They look great.
Yeah. Which I learned that basing technique from Austin Lynn, who did the Titans like that. And he told me how he did his Titans, which was using the I'm trying to think of the brand name off the moment. I'll come back later after the break and mention the brand name. But I know he uses the AK Interactive stuff. I used a different stuff, but it's basically like that wet earth stuff that you put down,
texture mud kind of.
Yes, and then it dries, and then I threw a little bit of rock in there, and then painted it, and they came out great.
Nice.
So very happy with those. I've actually started painting Abaddon too. So Saturday we're meeting up at Herrick Games. You're going to give me a tutorial on the oil wash on my Thousand Suns guys. I've started working on Abaddon, who I was gonna put off till last just because it'd be a treat to kind of do, but he's sitting there assembled, staring at me guiltily. So I'm working on him. And then the other thing I would mention is that I finished The End in the Death Part 2, which is the most recent book of the Siege of Terra, written by Dan Abnett. Now,
did that pick up for you at all? Because you were kind of feeling the slog last episode.
It was a slog. It was a slog to get through. I read a really good review on Goonhammer of it, and I was like, they nailed the review. Like it was. I felt like part 1 was good, but it also kind of rehashed a lot of things that had already been covered. Like I didn't feel like some of it needed to be there. This book is massive. It is massively thick.
I saw your special edition one
and a lot of it is a bit of a slog. Now the end, I'm no spoilers. I won't give any spoilers, but the end is a great payoff, where you get to see some very famous stuff, in from a perspective that you haven't seen before. But it was a slog to get to that point. And I got to tell you, like, I'm not happy to have to buy yet another one. I get it on one hand, but I also don't get it. Buying these special editions is a nightmare. And so if I don't get the last one, I'll sell off the whole set. So,
you're committed now.
Yeah. Well, I thought I was done, right? I thought I was going to be done. And it is literally a roller coaster of emotions trying to get those things, as anybody who tries to buy them will tell you. So anyway, that's what I've gotten done. What have you been working on?
Yeah. So speaking of Legions Imperialis, I'm getting pretty excited and ramping up towards that. So a couple things that I did was the Aeronautica planes that I had not yet finished painting.
Mm-hmm.
I did all my airbrushing stuff, I don't know, 6 months ago when I did a big push to get all my planes done, and half the planes I completely finished, more than half actually, but I still had 3 Xiphons, a Storm Eagle, a Fire Raptor, and the Thunderhawk. So all the airbrush work was done on those, but I hadn't gone and done any of the detail work yet. So in the last couple of days, I actually went back and finished those guys off, got all the details painted, got them varnished, got the decals on earlier today, and have those re-varnished again post decals so that I can walk you through the oil wash tutorial, and I'll actually have something that I'm gonna get some hobby progress out of at the same time. That
I'm really excited to see how that works out.
Yeah, and I think it's going to work really well for your Black Legion stuff.
I think so too.
It's a great tool. It's pretty easy. There's just a couple of little learning curve things to it, and I'll walk you through those. And if conditions are great, we're going to film that, and we'll definitely share that video. And if it's not ideal,
we'll redo it
in the shop, because we're going to Herrick, so we'll actually create that in an environment that we can easily film and produce, and we'll put that out as a short video on YouTube. Either way, so
yeah, I think it'd be very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. In addition to the planes, I've also been doing a lot of 3D printing with my resin printer in anticipation of Legions Imperialis. So this is doing small things like objectives, order tokens, things that the game has. The box set, from what we've seen with all the review copies that are out in the wild now, has everything is a really kind of thin card stock for what it has for those order tokens and objectives and things like that. So they're pretty flimsy. With any kind of real use, they're going to start fraying and things like that, or even separating.
Yeah.
They're not the most premium component in the set. So I found some files to print really cool objectives that have it's the same style of that, but it just has a little bit more weight and presence to it. The order tokens, they're available with all the Legion symbols on them. So I have the Thousand Sun logo on one side, and then the back side of that, it's very a 2-part print. Actually has what the order is for the game. So super excited for that. Also printing out a bunch of just small craters, 8mm craters, which I've wanted for Titanicus anyways for a long time.
Yeah, it'd be super nice.
But yeah, this will be good for troops, but also if something blows up, if a Titan blows up or something like that, I've got that file that I can scale up to depending on what we're doing for the game.
Right.
So yeah, going into purchases, I did purchase the starter box for Legions Imperialis, and that should be showing up Saturday, which I'm super excited for. Very excited for. In addition to that,
it's going to be so fast to paint up. It's not even funny.
Yeah. I've been consuming.
Yeah,
I've been consuming as much material as I could with Legions Imperialis release, and how people are painting the infantry on the sprue, and there's good ways to do that, and how quickly you can bust them out. And I think
that's the move.
Scale,
I think that's the move.
Yeah. Paint the infantry right there on sprue. Yeah. I've already worked out a trade, so I'm trading off the solar auxiliary half of the box to somebody for their marine half. So nice. I'm going to double up on marines right away, and they get to double up on solar auxiliary. So I'm going to have a pretty good collection. I was just doing the math. I don't know if it's a legal list, and it probably isn't at this point. But with all the planes that I have and the extra rhinos, the Kratos, and double infantry, plus planes and Titans that I have, I think I already have 3,000 points.
Of course you do.
Which it's probably not a good list,
and they're just going to release more stuff.
Play the game with 11 planes. You probably 3 is probably according to like the White Dwarf battle report
Right.
that I read of yours, which was fantastic.
It was good,
and
right?
everything that I've seen. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah.
Everything that I've seen is like, yeah, maybe have 3 planes and a Titan. And that
boy.
was like, yeah, I've got 11 planes and you can only have 1 Titan. So like get one really big Titan, which of course I have every scale of Titan that exists right now. So I've got the bases covered, super excited, all in. And then I started reading, which this is a restart of it because it just really didn't grab me the first time. But restarting The Infinite and the Divine, which is more Necron love from Black Library. This is Trazyn the Infinite and Orican the Diviner, which are 2 special characters and have been in the Necron kind of lineup of characters since they really evolved the Necrons to that more kind of Egyptian theme versus just the Space Raiders. And it's pretty interesting. They have a rivalry that's been going on for millions and millions of years now. And it's interesting just the kind of the personalities and things like that. It's similar that they have more kind of personality like the Twice Dead King. So it brings some of that, more of that Necron perspective lore to life, which is fun and interesting. But it's also very different from the Twice Dead King, which makes it's really interesting on how it's gone so far. So
very
about,
cool.
I don't know, 30% into that and enjoying it so far.
Honestly, not bad for the short time between recordings that we've done. So I wanted to kind of step outside our normal path here though, and now talk a little bit about Armies on Parade. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is like Armies on Parade happens every year and people do it. And I remember many years ago seeing a guy who'd done an amazing Dark Eldar like display for Armies on Parade where they were like coming through gates and stuff, and it was just on multi levels, and I thought it looked really cool. But I kind of ignore Armies on Parade in general. But this year, for whatever reason, when the Warhammer community article came out, and I started looking at the various pictures of the displays people had done and the winners of those, like I was blown away. I was blown away by some of the work that people have done here.
There's some really cool ones. And in our community, there's 5 or 6 people alone in our Facebook community that have shared what they've done, including one of them that was the Elite Choice call out. I don't know, 8 or 10 episodes ago.
Well, Josh Leak got his Soul Blight Gravelords up there.
Yeah, incredible looking force.
So good. And then who else was it? I wanted to say Alex Marsh, but I don't think that's who it was. But I mean, just looking at these, like, what an incredible set. I think it was Steve Phillips in his regimental champion.
Gene Stealer cult.
Yeah. No, not the Gene Stealer cult. Anyway, I'm
blanking on the name.
Yeah, sorry.
Incredible.
but I mean, as I looked at these in particular, I was super excited about not only to see people in our community had gotten theirs recognized, but there were a few of these in addition to that really stood out to me. I thought the Soulblight Gravelords one with the backdrop, which is just gorgeous, like whole looking at that, I wanted to buy that army because it looks so freaking cool. But this Space Hulk board is just amazing. Johan Kolker did this, and that is awesome.
You can't beat a good Space Hulk board.
No, just so well done. And then the last one that and it's funny, I was scheduling with John French for recording the stuff about the gameplay, and we were looking at these together. But that most atmospheric one, that's like it's the Mordheim looking set, 2 minutes to midnight Mordheim thing with like the underground level and the top level. Like just thematically, Erica Santorelli did this one. The minute I look into that, I'm like super drawn. Like they've even painted the shadows of the guys like on the walls behind the guys.
The torchlight illuminating.
It's incredible. That's incredible.
That was always my favorite part of reading White Dwarf as a kid, was all of the Golden Demon coverage and the dioramas specifically, especially all the fantasy stuff that had an underlayer. There's like a dungeon with somebody like chained up to the wall, and just those attention to details that tell so much of a story in just a display piece. So it's really, really cool to see that on an army scale.
It's just been, I just have to say to everybody who entered, whether you got an award here or not, like I have a whole new appreciation for this as not just a contest, but like a celebration of the hobby and what people are doing with it. It was Steve Phillips, by the way. It blew me away this year. And I don't know why it took me so long to recognize that, or maybe it's just the strength of the entries this year or something, but holy smokes. Well done to everybody who listens to this that got involved in that, whether you got represented on the thing or you just, presented it at your local shop or whatnot. And it made me think, I wonder if I should do something like this for, man, that's a
hard
lot
to travel with, but really cool.
Well, yeah, you're not going to travel with it, but I mean, man, and what do you do with it after I'd actually like to know what people do with it afterwards, because it's going to take up some room.
Yeah. That's your army display. You just keep it there.
I guess so. Anyway,
like a display case.
I just really wanted to shout that out. So
some really cool, I don't know, pinnacle of hobby.
Yeah,
there. So definitely worth the call out.
So in terms of games played, I have played nothing since our last recording, other than a few board games. We had family over. I played the Unfathomable, the Call of Cthulhu themed Battlestar Galactica.
That's a really
reskin.
Fun one.
So good.
Yep.
So good.
Yep.
And my cousin was here, and her two sons, two of her sons were here. They ended up being the traders on the ship together.
Oh, nice.
And fortunately, we were able to hold them off, but it came down to like one more turn was the pivotal point. Great game. If you haven't tried it, Unfathomable. It's good with 5 or 6 people is the best for that, because you have traders amongst the group that are trying to screw with you, although and stop you from getting the ship to port. Great theme, great game. But other than that, we just played a few little board games and whatnot. And Sky and Jade came down and played Unfathomable with us. So I was supposed to play. Nice. I was supposed to play Nemesis with them the next day, but I couldn't make it up to the shop. So Anyway, what about you?
Yeah, I'm in a similar boat. Played some board games and some RPGs, but have not played a tabletop game. Although I will say I have spent a lot of time, again, just reiterate, consuming Legions Imperialis, watching some of the battle reports and stuff like that.
I've never seen you chomp at the bit at something like this. I guess I did a little bit with Titanicus, but you have been like ready to go with this Legions Imperialis. I mean,
I'm sure we're going to end up doing an episode on Legions Imperialis, but really, like, I started with Titanicus, went into Titan Legions, jumped into Epic and Space Marine after that. And like, so this is it. Not only is it a very nostalgic kind of visiting of the scale and kind of just battle on that.
Yeah.
That scale, not only just the physical miniature size, but the actual just what you can bring
the battlefield itself.
The battlefield, exactly. There's a lot of nostalgia for that, but I'm also really excited for the game itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just it's going to be more narrative, a little bit more casual, and it very similar to Titanicus. Like, it's going to tell good stories, fun things are going to happen. There's a lot of tactical depth in there, but it's also kind of a more.
I did just watch the guys that, since we're going to have them on pretty soon, the guys from PlayOn Tabletop played through a battle.
Did you watch the full one?
I didn't. I was watching it live, but I had to end up bailing and going to something else. But it was interesting to watch. So,
I jumped in at a couple points. I think the whole video said and done is like 3.5 hours, which
it's a bit long.
Didn't have
I
time.
can't sit.
I didn't have time to watch, but But they are coming out with a edited 40-minute version at
Good.
some point in the next week or two. So definitely give that a watch when it drops.
Right on. Well, we'll talk to him soon. We'll see why it takes so long to put out that edited version.
Right, for sure. I am playing a game with Austin Lynn of Titanicus later this week, so you'll hear all about that in the next episode.
No, you're not.
Yeah, it's happening.
Okay. Where are you playing?
At his house.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
All right. We'll see. All right. On that note, let's do this. Let's take a short break. We're going to come back, and then we're going to start talking about the main topic of our show. And then we'll bring in Nick to share some of the kind of behind the scenes information and stories of what goes on there. So we'll be right back. All right, we're back, and now we're going to get into the main topic of the show, which is really what we titled the show. It's not a battle report, but you know, we're going to talk about battle reports in general. There's a lot of channels out there, Josh.
Yeah, there are.
And you know, you and I were talking in one of our meetings about what are we doing with the show and where do we go, and the subject of battle reports came up. And in fact, you know, you were like, hey, we could film some battle reports, et cetera, et cetera. And I was kind of against it. And my reasoning for that was, one, there are a lot of them out there. And we've always kind of gone our own direction here. And two,
right, yeah.
And two, you know, there are studios out there such as PlayOn Tabletop that are doing battle reports very, very well to like a very high degree. And I've always felt like if we're going to do something, we want to do it well.
Yeah.
And I felt like
and it's not an insignificant time or monetary investment to do it right.
Right. I mean, I remember we did an episode, and I talked about it earlier, episode 67. We talked all about battle reports at the time. And the thing that got me thinking was like, technology has changed just so much since then. Since the days of Jeff and Zach and I going to Adepticon and live streaming the 40K championship there, which we were asked to do. Yep. And, you know, now I go to an event like Adepticon or LVO or Nova, and they've got like a full-on rig. I think GW is doing it themselves now.
Right. Yeah.
And it's, you know, insanely expensive, the stuff they're doing. What we did was, I think, 4 webcams, the best webcams we could find at the time, PVC piping, duct tape, literally, you know.
Yeah.
So we get overhead shot, 2 side shots, and then we had a little tripod. We'd move the other camera around. A bunch of extensions, pushing out the bus on the USB on that machine I brought. It was a, you know, and it's so funny because that would be so easy to do now.
Right. Yeah.
But
just get a stream deck, a couple cameras.
Yeah, exactly. But at the time, I mean, we were trying to do it frugally, and that was just like live coverage.
Right. Yeah.
YouTube battle reports run the gamut from, you know, somebody holding a handheld recorder recording it to what I saw at PlayOn Tabletop, which is a fully dedicated studio with a team of people doing the editing and cutting it down to a shorter amount of time. So I know you and I have talked about sitting through battle reports before, and I think neither of us are exactly huge fans of like regularly watching battle reports and people playing to up their game or that kind of thing. But what do you like about battle reports?
Yeah, you know, it's funny because there's been times over the wargaming career that battle reports have more or less appeal. And part of that is dependent upon where I am in a game. If it's a new game, for example, like right now, like I can't consume enough Legions Imperialis because I'm super excited for it. And I guarantee you the second I have that stuff in hands, I won't watch a single battle report again.
Right.
And that's just the excitement. And I want to absorb all the information that I can now.
It's funny. I've never seen you this excited about something. Like I really haven't. And I mean, I've seen you get excited about various things, but like you just said, the early, you're trying to absorb all the information you can about it before it's even come out, right?
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Absolutely. Yeah. And so, yeah, watching battle reports or reading battle reports even has been a really kind of fun way for me to disseminate as much information as I can, just not having a rule book in hand yet and being so excited about it. And, it's a 30-year journey.
Have you found that it's like amped up your excitement about it?
Yes and no.
Okay.
It's funny because I have found a couple videos that, from what I've seen and what I know about the game already, like I've seen, these guys got a rule wrong. Like I don't want to watch the rest of this video. Like,
interesting.
I don't want to get wrong information in there, and I know they've already done this one thing wrong. So I'm pulling the plug on watching the rest of this video.
So it's like the whole lawyer thing where, once I prove that you've lied, the rest of your testimony is garbage.
It's all fallacy.
That's got to be really difficult right now, especially with something new coming out where they're still learning the rules. Like I watched you and I talked earlier about the PlayOn Tabletop live stream they were doing. Was it today? Yesterday? I don't know. It was either yesterday or today. Yeah. And they were live streaming them playing Legions Imperialis. And what I found watching it was, I think Nick had a real strong grasp of the rules.
Uh-huh.
And Tack had a good grasp, but they were correcting each other along the way. I think I'm okay with that. I mean, that doesn't. Yeah, it's when somebody comes out and definitively says, like, this is the rule, and you're like, that's not right.
And honestly, like I have absolutely no problem with people who get rules wrong, and they'll correct that going forward or something like that. It's just right now because I'm really just absorbing all the information that I can. That just happened to be the hard pass at that point. Like just knowing how being so early in the game, like just let's get as much correct information as possible, and
otherwise it sinks in and sticks with you.
Yeah, right.
So accuracy of rules is important for you in a bat rep. One of the things,
especially when it's something new.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Because one of the things I've found is I've been looking at the comments on the game I played with Nick is a lot of people are like, oh, well, this rule was wrong and this rule was wrong. And it's like, man, this is another reason I don't want to do battle reports. I don't think and I'll say it again, I don't think I've ever played a game of 40K where I've not made a mistake in the rules. It's just too many
honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they've said on the Badcast a few times, like there has never been a game of 40K played that has been like completely 100% correct.
There's no way.
And there's so much human error with dice and even like your tape measure. This exactly. I mean, it's a millimeter off or something like that, and just whatever.
100%.
It's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. So different battle reports I will absorb for different reasons. Like when I was looking into Middle Earth strategy battle games, there are a ton of battle reports all done by Australians for some reason. It's a pretty popular game in Australia, especially. And that was it was a good way for me to get a feel, because there's not a big local scene for that,
right?
Of how different factions play, how the game plays, how the mechanics work. Like having read the rules, but let's see it in action, and I don't have a local person to tap on there. I'm like, hey, can you walk me through a demo of this?
Right.
So it was really good for that. And then there have been a handful of, in the past, especially when I was playing, I guess more competitively, like 5th edition, I watched a lot of like Striking Scorpions videos, for example, because they were good terrain, good battle reports, really well done, right? And obviously this was 10 plus years ago at this rate for 5th edition. But I haven't watched a whole lot in between then and now, unless it's something specifically that I'm looking to learn some information, learn something new about.
Okay, so that's really interesting. Yeah. So for you, and I can see this, like I can see myself falling in the same, because I actually watched the
battle reports on Legions Imperialis too, just because I'm interested in it. It's not out yet. I kind of wanted to get a sense for how it actually is going to play. I did not play Epic, so for me, totally new skill set.
Sure.
Yep. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. So I think they can provide some value there. But there are people, and I think, PlayOn Tabletop's channel, what are the other guys? Tabletop Tactics. These guys all have thousands of views on these tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of views on these battle reports. And so clearly there is an audience that enjoys them, that learns from them. I could see, especially as you get a new army, as you're trying to get other opinions. And I think this is one of the great things about, dare I say, the internet at this time, because previous generations that played 40K did not have this kind of view. They did not have this kind of access. I remember distinctly our small group, this is before I met you, was playing 40K. And then the group expanded when I met guys at a tournament that played up in Oakland. That included a Don. And once that happened, all of a sudden we were playing new players who had been playing for a while. We realized we were getting rules wrong.
Yeah.
Doing things wrong. We ran into that at the Adeptus Titanicus tournament that you and I went to at Adepticon, where we not only did we teach the people we were playing, hey, you guys are playing this rule wrong. They taught us, hey, you guys are playing this rule wrong.
Yeah.
And, so I think there's certainly some value there. From a purely entertainment perspective, I don't find battle reports that entertaining. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, unless there's a lot of personality or it's a particularly exciting game. Like, you and I, we've talked so many times about, there's so many like really event heavy, like epic things have happened in games that we've played. And these are games that you and I have played together over the last 10 plus years.
Sure.
There's a handful that just really stand out because of those moments. And the thing about battle reports is, and I say this about Adeptus Titanicus especially, like if you're not there, if you're not piloting, if you're not in control, you don't have the agency of what's happening on the game. There's so much about miniature wargaming that is about the positioning. It's about the tactics. It's about the strategy. It's about resource management in Titanicus, or how, when you push your reactors, what you do with your shields.
You're making those decisions. So there's more.
You as the player, right?
Yeah.
So if you as the observer are watching somebody else do that, and like if I'm watching a battle report of Titanicus, for example, I have zero agency on any of the resource management or maneuvering or anything like that. It just, honestly, it holds zero interest for me and no entertainment value unless it's, I'm watching a game of friends play.
Yeah.
It's not a battle report, but Loopy and some of the Masters of the Forge guys have done a couple just live stream games of Adeptus Titanicus on Tabletop Simulator. Mm-hmm. And that was interesting because I was actually in the room, quote, quote, and could actually, help and walk through some rules. And I just had a little bit more.
But see, you're engaged. You're engaged
in a game that way. Yeah, exactly.
It's less of a passive observation of what's going on. And you're actually engaged. And I think that's where some of these channels do, like, for example, Nick's game and my game was recorded, but then they release it live and they're in the chat while it plays for the first time live.
Right. Yeah.
And so people were engaged and engaging with the guys who were involved in it. And so there's some discussion back and forth there. And that, I think there's where
I think that's a great way to do that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. They have an incredible production value. And, whatever it's 10 hours of recording, but it's distilled down to 45 minutes or something like that. Yeah. So you're getting the really concise kind of highlights of it, but then also having that live interaction as people are watching it, the condensed version instead of watching a 10-hour production or even 3 hours of what the actual gameplay time was.
Yeah.
I think that's really smart, and that's a great way to approach it. And it adds that extra level of engagement and entertainment of being able to interact with the players and hosts in live time like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's always different strokes for different folks, right? Like, some people very, very much enjoy battle reports and enjoy pointing out where people did things wrong or made bad choices, or take from it learning and say, hey, I want to understand how to better play my army or play against a specific army. I mean, I can see the inherent value in that. I think for me, from a purely entertainment perspective, I feel exactly like you do. And that quote that you gave, I was gonna tell you to say that quote if you hadn't said it, which was the lack of agency in something.
Yeah.
And it goes for the same for me with role-playing games. Like, I cannot tell you how many people I've taught Dungeons and Dragons to over the years. I've played for how old am I? I've played for 40 plus years at this point. Nerd. And inevitably, super nerd. And inevitably, when I go to show somebody, they're like, well, I'll just watch. And I'm like, don't do that.
Nope.
Don't do that. You're not going to have any fun. I promise you. Play. You don't need to know the rules, etc. Now, 40K is a little different. You got to know the rules when you're playing, but there is definitely, like Shell is interested in the game, but she can't stand there and watch me play a game. Like, she gets bored, But if she's playing a game, she's engaged.
Yeah. And you're teaching somebody that way and they're engaged with it, or even if you're playing a doubles game and you're side by side, or if you're across the table for them. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I would say 5th and 6th edition, you brought something up about learning how other armies play. Like 5th and 6th edition, I was playing a lot more tournaments at that point.
Yeah.
But, we all had, 1 or 2 armies locally that were playing, and some of them that you would encounter in a tournament just were not represented in our local group.
Yes.
So watching some battle reports on those armies specifically, like, what's, Necrons versus Tau or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of seeing some of those interactions. I would watch up to a point, but I would rarely finish them because I'd be like, tactically I would have done something different here. So the rest of this is kind of null and void for me from here on out, because that's going to cascade so many other variables in the game.
Yeah, I could see that. But again, I think you're looking at it as a learning tool, which I think there's value in that, without a doubt.
Yes.
Without a doubt. Were I playing in tournaments on the regular, it would probably be something that I'd be like, I don't have the opportunity to play a game right now. I'm still trying to paint my army for the tournament. So, let me watch this army play and I can maybe get some ideas or things. So I look, I'm not, I don't want to sound like I'm bashing on battle reports. I think they have a place. And certainly when I started this hobby, you started even before I did. Like, there were no channels doing stuff like that. YouTube,
right? Yeah,
YouTube was
the internet didn't exist when I started this hobby.
Yeah. So it's fascinating to see what people have done. So some of the things that I certainly like in a battle report are an edited battle report, things that are trimmed down. And I think the guys from, Dave from miniwargaming.com kind of was the first one to say, I'm going to edit up the speed of this thing so that you can follow along and you're not just sitting there watching two guys stand at a table.
Right. Yep.
And he would, I remember he even did a video on how they do their battle reports so you could see, okay, I film this roll of the die and then I stop, and then I film this and then I stop. And it was pretty fascinating to see how they did it. But now you have groups with studios, not that Dave didn't have a studio at the time, and now his studio is even more elaborate and he's got camera crews and all this stuff. But you have guys like these guys over at PlayOn Tabletop, and we'll talk about that experience in a little bit here. And you see the thousands of dollars they have spent to set this up.
Right.
That's not really achievable by everybody,
Yeah.
It's just not. You have we could easily film us playing a game and take all day to film it, Yeah. And that's the other thing. I think when you're, who did I just see talking about this recently? But when you're filming stuff like this, you are it was some YouTube channel, and he was a content creator, and he was saying, when you spend a lot of time creating this content and you live and breathe 40K as we tend to do.
Yeah.
Record and you're recording this, like you end up playing less. And
right. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where, I mean, even in a day where you could play 2 or even 3 games, I mean, not me, but somebody else could, 2 or 3 games, you're doing 1 game stretched out over the entire day.
Yeah. And that's one really long game. Yeah.
Yeah. And most of my games are pretty long as it is. So
yeah.
This was a new record for me of it. It was exhausting. It was exhausting. I do like when the video is edited down to its distilled components.
Yeah.
One thing, to go on a tangent here about Formula One for a minute, but one thing that like Sky Media and the people who film the Formula One races live are very good at is focusing on where the drama is.
Yeah.
In the event. And this is usually why when we talk about games played, like I don't talk about, well, in the first turn I did this, and then the second turn, we're like, let me tell you what I learned from the game, or where things went wrong, or where I did something I was really pleased with.
Couple specific highlights or key moments, or where things really pivoted, or what you learned is exactly what.
And like in F1, they're very good at like, listen, this last season, for those who don't watch Formula One guy Max Verstappen dominated the season. I mean, like unlike anything that's ever been done before. It is insane. 19 out of 22 races, was only not on the podium 1 time. So it's insane. You saw very little of Max Verstappen on the racetrack because they were like, he'd be so far ahead. They'd just be like, we're not really showing you. Like they'd show him at the start.
Podium shots at the end. Yeah.
He'd come into the pits at some point. He'd take off again. Okay, great. He's back in the lead. Now let's look at who's in 3rd and 4th and 12th and 11th. Everybody who was jockeying for positions and for points, that's where they focused, because that was the most entertaining part of the race. And I think battle reports need to follow something similar, where it's like, I need to understand where the grand scheme of things are. This is what I like about some battle reports, where it's not necessarily me watching step by step, me moving every single thing. But I want to know where the pivotal moments were and what happened and how they came about. And that's not easy to do in a 40K game. That's not
right.
That's not easy to do.
The interesting thing too about watching a game of 40K is so much of what happens in the game is dice rolling.
A lot.
Which isn't the most interesting thing to watch, but if you don't have the results there either, then it's so kind of abstracted, and unless you're summarizing what happened,
I've never seen anybody do that, where they're just like, these guys fire at, the squad of Devastators fires at the squad of Necron Warriors, 12, 8 of the Necron Warriors are destroyed, but 3 come back, and like no dice rolls, just telling the story. It'd feel kind of like playing G.I. Joes back in the day, which is really what we're doing.
But something like what had a thought that had come to my mind was doing exactly that, like narrating something and not showing the dice rolls, because that cuts out half the time, if not more, maybe 60% of the time of what is actually being shown on a battle report, which I do appreciate that a lot of the modern, more studio approaches are having kind of a dedicated dice camera.
Yeah.
So you're seeing that at the same time as the player interaction or models being picked up or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's less kind of dead air of just dice rolling, and then.
Or you see one guy rolling 2s over and over.
One guy rolls 2s for 10 hours in a row.
I swear, I thought at some point my luck would change. I mean, I think that would be interesting if you were simply narrating a story that way, but it would be a totally different experience. I don't think it's really a battle report. And
right. Which would work well for something smaller scale like Necromunda, which again, is going to have less of an audience, but a more narratively focused audience anyway. So I think that's going to be more okay. Where like a tournament player would probably have no interest in, like, I need to see the dice. I need to see what happens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that, the reality is for these channels is that's where the clicks are. That's where the views are. The people watching are tournament players that want to see or are interested in playing a tournament type environment.
Yeah. Well, look at the last episode that Justin was on. Like, he has not played a game of 10th edition yet, but he's been watching a lot of competitive, like, Death Guard games.
Sure.
And
that's how he's getting his fix.
Exactly. So he's getting his quote reps in that way by watching other people play it, and he is absorbing information and tactics and strategy and listening and learning from them. Which is kind of exactly what you're talking about, of with just that the more competitive focus. Like you're getting something out of that experience, whether it's just seeing how somebody else pilots your force, seeing how the opponent's army interacts with that. But it's interesting because it is, again, back to kind of the learning aspect of battle reports, which seems to have the most appeal for, I think, most people.
Yeah.
Less entertainment and more kind of learning.
Without a doubt. So, let me talk a little bit more about the trip. I know I spoke about this a couple episodes ago, but I flew up to Vancouver. And how did this all come about? Well, Nick approached me at Adepticon several years ago, before the pandemic, said, hey, we're doing this channel. Would you be interested? I've listened to the show for a long time. Would you be interested in coming up? I said, yeah, I think that sounds like a lot of fun. Pandemic hits, we kind of drop everything because nobody's traveling. And and then at Adepticon last year, he came up and said, hey, are you still interested in this? I'd really like to get up there. Absolutely. So let's do it. So we make it happen. Took a flight out of SFO, San Francisco, to Vancouver. It's a pretty short flight, about 2-hour flight. And Nick was very his hospitality was off the charts. He let me stay at his place, so I got to save some money, from a hotel staying at his place, which was great. So he and his wife put up with me, and his kids put up with me, and so that was really, really sweet. Their studio is 2 floors. The top floor is where they actually do the filming, and there's a couple offices up top where Tack and I don't know that Nick has an office particularly, but Tack has like a work area there and a paint studio area there, and they are painting stuff constantly because
armies and terrain.
They're having to provide, And the day before we did this, like, Nick had printed up some terrain and he had a couple print failures, and so he figured out a solution of just making rubble. And so that table that you see in the match we played, like, Nick painted up a lot of that terrain the night before while I was there. He was like, "Oh, you want to help me paint this?" No, not really. I want to go to bed. I'm tired. I'm tired.
I was wondering about that because with the pyramids and things like that, I was like, "Oh, did they intentionally make it more of a Thousand Sun kind of themed?" Yeah,
very much so.
Makes a lot of sense.
And I do love, like, their tagline is "Dice Tell Stories," right? Which boy, they told some stories that
absolutely.
But I also appreciate that they go for a very thematic look to every table, and they want to kind of have a little story around it as well. So, Nick and I got along great. He's a great guy. As I said, their studio is 2 floors. The bottom floor contains like some storage and a kitchen and food stuff, and then an office area where all their editors are working, and they have like 4 or 5 video editors. When I was there, I saw 4 or 5 of them, and they're all working on different shows and different episodes of the show, kind of all the same time. And I literally sat in a meeting that I've sat in many times, very much like a sprint meeting, where they were talking about, "You're working on this, I'm working on this, you're working on that. We need to upgrade the software. How's the version?" I've lived in the tech industry, so I've been in many of those meetings. It was eerily familiar. But I was really blown away by the professionalism of everybody there. Like, they were really, they're all nerds, just like us.
Photo, video, games.
but super focused on what they're doing. And it's a real business and a real operation. And the thing that struck me there too was that, Nick and Tack are the owners of the business, is my understanding.
Okay.
And so they have people they're responsible for people. Right. I mean, when you have your own business and that kind of thing, they are responsible for people. And so
you have employees, their people's livelihoods are dependent upon the success.
And even as I was speaking, they were looking for another video editor to hire. So, I mean, clearly they are running a business. I don't think they're going to get rich doing this, but they're clearly making enough money to support an actual business and have employees.
And clearly passionate about doing it for the amount of effort that it takes to not only run the business, play the games, and do all the video production side of it.
Yeah. And I mean, I asked Nick at one point, is this still all fun or is this just work at this point? And he goes, sometimes it's just work, and I get it. And, I really do get that. The process of recording was interesting. There was a lot left on the cutting room floor. And when we have Nick on later, I'm going to ask him what happens to all that extra footage that got left, because there's probably some pretty good outtakes and stuff in there. And also, it's interesting because there were things that I said that I really wanted to make the show. I talked about Colin Ward painting my 1,000 Suns. I talked about Dave from Dave Paints painting my demons. I wanted to give credit where credit was due. I wasn't trying to claim like these were models I painted. But that didn't make the cut in terms of the time. They were trying to get it down to a certain amount of time. There was a lot of in between each round, us discussing what I think I should do, what you think you should do, and all that like didn't make it in. I think the game took longer because of my twos.
You couldn't kill anything.
Oh God. Our first round was a slap fight anyway.
You both had terrible dice that first round.
Yeah, it was awful. Yeah. It was a fun game. I mean, don't get me wrong, like the whole process of filming it was very fun. But it's a lot of work. And as I mentioned before, it's just interesting. Like I guess I want people to understand, like, you're not going to just pick up a camera and get that level of quality. Nick is, as you know, it has worked in video before. He knows what he's doing in terms of here's the best way to film something. Here's, as he took video of the armies after the fact with the little fog machine and stuff. He didn't use one of those sliding devices that you put a camera on and it slides along. He knew how to hold the camera and just move it. You know this stuff because you do this as well. But it was just fascinating to watch somebody else other than you do it. And clearly Nick knew, and he pointed out to me, he they have other people from other Battle Report programs come on and they don't hide anything. They're like, this is how we do it.
Right. Yeah. Yep. No gatekeeping there.
No.
Like for how much work and the effort goes into that, and equipment investments and things like that. Like, I'm sure that if somebody else can do as good of a job, if better, then they'd be stoked for them to do so.
The screens behind each player and the projector to project on those screens. I'm gonna guess you're talking $5,000 to $8,000 per person. So $10,000 to $16,000. Yeah, just for that aspect of it, and that doesn't take into effect everything that they build, paint, play with, the mats, the cameras, the edit. Good God, it was an impressive display. Yeah.
That's why we have a $50 green screen that you painted for us.
50.
I don't know.
No, we're not big rollers there, buddy. But it works. It works, and it does what we need it to do. Yeah. So anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to have Nick coming up next. He's going to join us, and we're going to talk to him a little bit about his background, about why he decided to do this, how they differentiate themselves from other groups. Because I think that's, whenever people talk to us about, I want to do a podcast, or nobody really talks to me about that anymore, but they used to. And I would say, what are you going to do that's different than everybody else?
Right. Yeah.
And a lot of times Yeah, a lot
What's
of
going
times.
to define you?
Yep. And a lot of times I would see people go, "Oh, well, we want to do it like the independent characters, or like at the time the 11th Company, or whatever." I'd be like, "But somebody's already doing that. Why are you?" I didn't try to go out and do 40K radio.
Right.
They were doing it very well for quite a long time. And so with Nick too, it's like, how are you going to do this different than everybody else? And I think the end product shows a lot of what they're trying to do. So anyway, we're going to take a short break. We'll come back and we're going to do a discussion with Nick. And then after Nick, we're bringing in Adam Abramowicz from The Army Painter, because they sent us over a whole bunch of these Speedpaints, the 2.0 set. And
2.0s, yeah.
You've heard Josh and I talk a little bit about them, but I honestly cannot rave about them enough. So I wanted to get Adam on to kind of talk about the line, talk about himself. We know Kat is working for the Army Painter, and somebody else is not working for it too. So we'll have Adam on right after Nick, but we'll be right back to have that discussion. All right, and we're back, and as promised, we're here with Nick from PlayOn Tabletop. How you doing, Nick?
I'm excited to be here. This is a lot of fun. I was a little like, maybe one day I'll be on a podcast.
Oh, for God's
Welcome
sakes.
to the party.
Oh, okay. We've already made tons of jokes about how I just rolled nothing but twos, but anyway.
It was I felt bad.
I told Josh,
felt really bad.
I called Josh from the airport after I left the studio, and I was like, when your opponent's apologizing to you for your dice rolls, you know you're rolling. You're rolling really
I had asked if the dice just came out of the microwave with the twos up, since that's all they were.
Yeah.
It was so bad. I felt so bad. Like, we invited him all the way up here.
It's fine. I'm used to it. Ask Josh.
That's true. Yeah.
So anyway,
usually
Nick,
you roll more ones, so twos were a refreshing change of pace.
well, the worst part is the ones don't even tease you with a reroll so that you could roll a one again. It's just, no, we're not even going to let you. We're just going to crush your dreams right here.
So now that the video's out, have you been getting a lot of flack for how your poor rolling in that? Okay, that's good. That's good.
I mean, I've been following the chat on the video and watching people correct rules, which we'll get to in a minute. But and seeing, well, why doesn't he have Magnus in his list? Well, Magnus can't be at every fight. I wanted something that's and it's interesting too. I think I find socially, and we're kind of jumping ahead of the gun here, but I find socially, when people realize the internet has this level of anonymity, people seem to think, and what happens is a lot of times I will comment back on, like, somebody will say, oh, this is a terrible list. And yeah, okay. I mean, yes, there are more powerful Thousand Suns lists, whatever. But I'll say, well, actually, here's why I brought this list and this, that, and the other thing. And I find people a lot of times go, oh, well, I didn't mean any offense by that. I'm it's like, oh, yeah, that's an actual person,
People are always surprised when I respond back to comments on YouTube. They're like, oh, wait, there's an actual person behind this? This isn't some, like, made-up person?
I think people get in their heads when they're on the internet that there's not actual people involved here, and this is why I always treat people with respect. So anyway, Nick, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. This is kind of a smorgasbord, so we're talking about a lot of things, but in particular, we talked about my trip up there, the experience there. I talked a little bit about your studio, but I kind of wanted to hear it from the horse's mouth. But before we get started in that, you have not actually been in 40K that long in comparison to some people. When did you start playing Warhammer 40,000?
Yeah, I guess not. Like, I definitely didn't start in, like, the Rogue Trader days or anything like that. Like, my gateway drug was the Middle Earth strategy battle game. That was how I got into tabletop wargaming. Always interested in that kind of stuff. But when I moved to Vancouver, Canada for film school, I had to leave all my miniatures home, and I didn't know anybody here. And I was like, nobody really plays Middle Earth around here. Maybe I should look into this 40K thing. So I started dabbling in some podcasts, and I found IC podcast, and then you had an interview on there with a guy named Chris Jones, who's a local, about a local Food Hammer tournament, basically a charity tournament supporting the local food bank. I was like, whoa, I can go to that. And so I started making a list, making armies, building an army, went to my very first tournament and found this tournament because of your podcast. And then from there, met everyone in the community that I know now today. So you guys are actually responsible for getting me to 40K.
Yeah, one of the things the independent character is good for is helping men meet other men.
On the internet specifically.
Yeah. So that was at the very, I played one game of 5th edition and then 6th edition came out. So
okay.
I didn't get much opportunity with 5th.
Okay. I played a lot of 5th, and Josh played a whole lot of 5th.
A lot of 5th.
And so you did just mention film school. You went to film school, which obviously you leverage a lot of that knowledge into this YouTube channel. What? Tell me what the genesis of you saying, "Hey, I'm gonna create a YouTube channel, and it's not just gonna be me with a single camera. It's I'm gonna do this right."
Well, that's kind of the gist of it. So my film is my profession. So I went to film school. I went to the film industry. I did documentaries. I did ads. I did
Steven Seagal
post-production. I did one Steven Seagal movie as a production assistant. It was terrible.
Awesome. Oh, did you really? Terrible. I know he films up there a lot.
As a production assistant, I have stories about that, but that's not for here.
Okay.
It was a bizarre film set to be a part of.
How wild is that? I was totally joking. Like, I did not know that.
just one.
And I just pulled that out of my hat. Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, I got weird stories about that. But so I've been in the film industry for a while. I even had my own company. I did all sorts of various film stuff.
Okay.
And so that was my profession, right? And I met lots of people through 40K, through playing games, had a gaming club and stuff like that. And some people I met were also professionals because it just kind of tend to mesh with other people that are in similar life patterns as you. One of the guys I met was a guy named Tak, who was a media professional in marketing. He had some video experience as well, but it was marketing. And so we were really tired of watching battle reports that we weren't interested in watching. Like, we love 40K, we love video. We weren't enjoying watching any of the battle reports out there. Not really. Like, we loved seeing the cool painted armies. We loved seeing cool gameplay. We loved the personalities even, but we found we were often bored. And because we have such a professional background, we were often turned off by bad sound or bad video or bad editing or a 3-hour video that we just really weren't interested in watching. Mm-hmm. So we were like, I wonder if there's a way to do this better. Mm-hmm. And so Tak, to be honest, had the idea first, and he called a bunch of people together and for a pizza party, essentially. And he called me up and said, "Hey, I've got this idea to pitch you. Do you want to come over?" And at first I'm thinking, oh, great. Here's a Ponzi scheme. He wants to pitch me.
Can you buy some LuLaRoe pants?
Yeah.
They'll fit.
I was kind of wondering if it was something like that. Because we were friends, but we weren't like that close at that time.
Did he ask you to bring 2 friends with you to the meeting?
So there was this group of 5 of us that didn't really know each other very well, and we had just kind of met tangentially through 40K playing in various tournaments and events and stuff like that. And Tak puts up this, and me and Tak had talked about this a little bit. Like, I had just casual conversations about this, saying, "I think we can do these better." Mm-hmm. He was just in the middle of a transitionary job between jobs at the moment, and so he was looking for something different. And I was kind of in a weird spot in my work right now, where I was like, I was looking for a change as well. And so as soon as he pitched it, I was like, "Yes, I want to do this. Where do I sign?" And he was just like trying to like gauge interest, but like all of us were like, "This is a really cool idea, and we could do this." Mm-hmm. And so there's a few other guys on the team, like JT and Tycho and Steve, and all of them are fantastic 40K players and good personalities to have on camera, but none of them really know anything about camera or the technical side of things. And so me and Tak were leading that charge of things, and we decided to do some tests, and just we actually recorded a couple games that never saw the air.
Sure.
Because we just wanted to get it
sure.
right.
Yeah.
And, we did some tests in my basement and said, where can we do it? We had,
Jeff and I recorded hours of stuff just trying to figure out what are we doing.
It's the dry fitting of video production.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. And we just really wanted to see something that we wanted to watch. And so we wanted to do high production value, so lots of cameras. We wanted to. There was this thought of let's combine the sport element of 40K with the reality TV show elements of enjoyable smaller bite-sized video that you can actually consume and watch. So there was this kind of sport element, and there was a reality TV show element. A lot of inspiration actually came from Will Wheaton's Tabletop, which is a tabletop a board game show. And so a lot of inspiration was like we wanted to emulate some of the elements of that, interviews, montaging bits when needed. You don't need to see every dice roll in a game. You need to see the important ones. You need to understand the game. You need to understand what's going on. And so we wanted to focus on entertainment and clarity. Could you understand what's going on, and was it entertaining to watch? What's it really about? Was this
That's a really interesting point, Nick, because as Josh and I were talking earlier, we were talking about the value of battle reports. And I know, and the title of this episode is It's Not a Battle Report, because I know you don't like calling them battle reports.
We sought for a long time to try to find a better name than battle report. But to be honest, the algorithm likes battle report. So
this is also why I don't like when people call the background fluff, right? I call it I call it lore, right?
Yeah,
it's lore.
I agree with that.
Yeah, but it's interesting that you bring that up, because one of the things that Josh was talking about and I was talking about was the value of a battle report from an educational standpoint. Hey, I'm going to play this army. I want to see how it plays. Maybe this guy has other ideas, or his list is more interesting, or let me see how the army plays against this other army, because I'm going to play in tournaments and I want to know how it plays, versus the entertainment value, like the value of it as a piece of entertainment, which you hit an interesting point, because I struggle to find it entertaining, though you guys distill it down to a level where I'm like, I can watch 40 minutes of this and be entertained.
Cool.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think the way you frame that as sports and kind of entertainment in that reality show is exactly how it comes across. And I think that's a really good formula to make an entertaining show that is informative, and you also hit all the highlights of how the game's played. I think it's a really, really cool system that you've hit.
Thank you. Yeah, but when we started, nobody was doing it. Almost everybody was doing the 3-hour handy cam, getting a little bit dizzy, to be honest, that were lengthy and stuff like that. So we really wanted to change it up.
Has there been an evolution for you, or did you start that way and you've only just kind of refined from there?
Oh, we've evolved. We do seasons of our show because it's more cinematic and more like there's no meaning to the seasons. But at the end of every season, we do like, okay, what worked well, what didn't, what can we improve? And we've if you go look at some of our early videos, it's massively different. How we record, how many cameras, what the position of cameras. Like we've carefully adjusted each camera to be in the exact place that we feel is the most communicative and clear and entertaining and leads to smooth editing. Like for instance, we put over-the-shoulder player cam so you get the players in it, but you also have the table in it, so you can see what's going on the table, but you also get the player's point of view. And then we have 7 cameras to film these games, right?
Yeah, that's
so
impressive.
Like a lot of the live streams, for instance, just really go from overhead to player cam, and the overhead is great for giving information, but it's boring to watch.
Yeah.
And the player cam, more often than not, is sometimes entertaining for the players, but it doesn't really give you information. So having this blend of all these cameras, you really need to be able to bounce between them to be able to give the information and the clarity.
I think that's critical. In fact, when we take photos of the games we're playing, a lot of times we are taking photos of the miniatures or Josh's crotch. But then, but in all seriousness, we'll take photos of the miniatures, but the photos that I enjoy the most are the photos of the people playing and seeing.
Yeah.
And this is photos, not video, but seeing the people playing. I think that's such an important piece of it that gets lost sometimes.
Well, I think ultimately I think people sometimes miss the fact that 40K is, I like to call it a shared narrative between two players.
Yes.
That's really at the heart. That's what our game is, or multiple players. But the players are part of the game. If all you see is the armies, or all you see is the players, you're missing part of the game. So
Absolutely.
You need that whole thing. Like when people roll that 6 or that 1 that's all important, you want to see them cheer and get excited. Like you want to see that and experience that with them, and that's what we're trying to achieve: is getting those moments, finding those sport moments when you're watching a football game and they get that touchdown, and everyone goes crazy, right?
Josh, did my despair come through in the video?
Yeah, there's a couple times
where
that,
you just
we can hear you like it's almost like you're screaming "con" in the background, but the narration like cuts in over that. But you can absolutely see the palpable.
The one moment where JT pauses the music and he just says like, "I have no words."
Yeah,
and we all stop. And it's like,
I have to tell you, like JT is a fantastic narrator too. Like he did a bang up job narrating through that. He has a great voice for it. He's a lot of fun.
He does. He really does. Like he came from professional wrestling, actually.
I could tell.
And so a lot of his like terms, like slobberknocker and cage match and stuff like that, come from wrestling. And that was intentional when we went into it. Is that when we wanted to discover the voice of how we were telling this, is there's that bit of sport.
He's very
to
good
go along with it. Yeah, and he's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Okay.
Really hit the nail on the head bringing that narrative element in there too. And like I haven't seen anybody else that does that, where it's the two players interacting and then the narration on top of that.
It's not easy.
No.
When we record these games, we have the two players playing, and then we have someone shooting, and then we have someone that is the scriptwriter / narrator that is literally just there taking notes, writing helping us keep the score, but they're also writing the script for how they're going to present this later, and they're doing the VO. And that's a lot of work because they have to manage this and make intros and figure out what's important, because they're really drawing attention to this is important. Pay attention. This role is going to make a big deal, or it's going to be a big deal.
No, and actually, you just kind of beat me to the punch on the question I was going to ask there, which was exactly what you just said, which is great. It's great. The fact that there are so many people involved. It is not, and I think the thing I was trying to get across earlier too was I was like, you're not going to achieve this look with just one person. You can't even, or just one person filming it with who's also playing. It just is not possible. This requires a team. So speaking of teams, what do the PlayOn Tabletop studios consist of? I know you have multiple video editors. You have you have Tack.
To be honest, why don't I go through what it takes to make a single video?
Sure.
And it pretty much touches on our entire team.
That would be amazing.
Okay, so we because there's probably about 100 man hours or more that goes into a single video. So first of all, we don't just randomly put players together. There's a lot of intentionality that goes towards there. We actually have discussions and meetings upon which armies should face each other because we want to make good games. So we take a look at the meta, for instance, and I know people hate to say that, but to be honest, we kind of need to. If we don't want to put the top of the meta against the bottom of the meta often, because there might be a little bit of imbalance there. And so we want to make sure we're playing armies that will give a good game, because we're going to spend this much time editing and filming this thing.
You don't want to
make sure the game
2
is,
rounds.
we actually have a rule that the game has to go to turn 3 or we re-rack. So if it doesn't go to turn 3, we re-rack. So we're often trying to balance the armies so they feel like a game, right? And so there's discussions that go around that, and there's often some painting that goes around that if it's a new army or something like that, because people like new. So we're often trying to paint up the latest new thing, and then there's at least an hour of setup for all these cameras and stuff like that that goes before we play. Sometimes more, the terrain making, and that involves our whole team. The night before, and that involves our whole team. Tycho does a lot of painting on our channel for us. Tack does a lot of our airbrushing and painting as well. But we all have our own armies, and we bring our own armies together. I'm in charge of a lot of the technical stuff, so I do a lot of the camera stuff like that. We have some people on our team that do it. We have at least one employee that's mostly doing video work for us now, so I don't have to film everything.
Josh,
and that's really nice.
Somebody got yelled at for not putting the batteries back in the charger for the lavalier mics. Who didn't do this?
And maybe it was me.
Nick was a taskmaster, man.
That is a staple of every production of Why Aren't the Lavs Charged?
We have so many batteries.
This smiling, happy-go-lucky face you see
hides behind it a taskmaster of a boss.
Wait, you're running a production company to make this happen, so you kind of have to.
We are. The closest analogy to what we're doing is really a TV production show. Like we're doing a TV production. So there's multiple episodes, there's multiple seasons, there's multiple producers and directors and talent. In the film industry, my main role was assistant director, which was in charge of logistics, in charge of making sure everyone knew where they were supposed to go and get everything in place to get the production going. Assistant director. But anyways, so we get to the table. We have two players. Often they're two players from our team, but they could be a guest and a player like we did, me and you, Carl. And then we'll have assigned a shooter and we'll assign a scriptwriter. The scriptwriter is usually JT, but sometimes Taika will pinch hit. On occasion, myself or Steve, which is on the team as well, have pinch hit for that. But the majority is JT that does that. He's got a great voice for it. He's most experienced on it, and he does a great job. Yeah. So does everyone else that does it too.
He's also, and the other thing you didn't mention there is the other thing JT's really good at is he's a tournament player, so he understands the rules incredibly well. And so even as you have questions playing, or you're kind of stuck on something, he might make a suggestion to help you out. A bit. He was very helpful. Incredibly helpful to me while we were up there. I learned some things about my army I didn't know, so it was very helpful. Yeah,
and that's what we're hoping to do is like we want to see people play at their best, right? Yeah. We're looking for good games, right?
Well, you saw it. That's my best.
That game. We're looking for good games. Doesn't always mean like high level tournament play.
No,
good games means a fun one to watch.
Yes.
Yeah. And anyways, well, so if I'm not shooting. It'll be probably Owen, which is another one of our shooters, an employee that we got on the team. And then after we shoot the game, which is usually about a 7 to 8 hour experience, longer if it's a longer game, like we've just finished filming Imperialis. That game
we
awesome.
saw.
I love it.
Yes.
13 hours.
Yeah.
That was a 13-hour film shoot.
Wow.
That was a long one. Anyways, regardless, so after we film it, then it will go down to one of our editors, usually Ben, one of our editors, who will offload it and he'll sync it, the footage, all 7 cameras and all the audio, the 4 tracks of audio, and then we will start making graphics for it. The graphics are based upon photos that we'll take the next day. Usually that's me taking photos of all the miniatures and cinematics, which is like the cool action shots of it all. There's another like 3 or 4 hours of that. And while that's happening, usually JT is writing the script at home the next day. He's writing the script of what happened, the major beats, what's important, and recording that. And then we take that, the graphics and the synced file, and we give it to the editor. We have 3 editors now. 4? 3?
You were looking to hire one.
We have 3 in a contractor. So it's the only way we can get them going, because otherwise we'd have to release like one every 3 weeks or so. So we often have 3 or 4 edits going at once to be able to try to release once a week. And usually that edit will take 30 to 40, maybe 50 hours of editing, depending on the size of the game. And then there's a review session where we go back and forth and review to make sure it's good and make sure we've caught any mistakes. And at this point, we try to either acknowledge a mistake or try to like make sure it's clean, because mistakes can often make it not seem like a great edit. So we try to make it at least clear what's going on. And it's very much possible we add graphics if we need to. We'll add music, we'll add commentary, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And then thumbnails made, and it gets out there. And so all that told, that's about a.
And then initially for your guys' channel, you're releasing it to your Patreon or subscribers rather first.
Yeah.
And then after, I don't know, a week or 2, it then goes public, which
typically.
Okay. In which we thought was really interesting that you release it. It's pre-recorded, but you release it kind of as a live thing and then have some
as
chat.
A premiere.
Yeah. I thought that was fun.
It's well, again, it goes back to that kind of movie-esque, cinema-like thing we're trying to do, is that's where cool. We're trying to make it exciting. We want you to be excited to come watch an episode, right? Like we want people to like, I can't wait to watch this episode where these 2 players play.
Yeah.
Like, that's both the sport aspect and the cinematic aspect, the entertainment aspect. Like that's the excitement. We want to build that. Anything we can do to make that exciting is awesome for us, because remember, we want to watch these. So if we want to make ones that we want to watch, that you want to watch, so if you want to be excited with us,
I think that's important.
Great.
Yeah.
And Josh and I, we were talking about your level of, what's the term you use, Josh? Agency when watching when playing a game. So, for example, when you're playing a game of 40K, you're the one making the decisions, so you're engaged, right? You're the one rolling the dice. 100%. It's very hard to watch for me, and I think Josh agrees. It's
100%.
very hard to watch a game of 40K live through the whole thing and be like, I'm excited about this. It just, it's not a spectator sport for the most part.
But these miniatures don't move.
No. And the other,
but
the point you hit on that I completely agree with, and I think the thing that you achieve by releasing it the way you do is suddenly people are engaged, because not only are you showing it for the first time live, people are chatting about it, and you are responding, or myself or whoever was part of it is responding and answering questions or making jokes or whatever, and it feels like a more engaging environment.
It's a lot more interactive, even if you're not part of the game itself. It's like you're in the room watching the game happen and interacting with friends and players right there, which it's really kind of an amazing package that you've put together.
100%. Like we want people to feel like they will enjoy watching no matter who's winning the game. Like even if it's an army that they don't play, that they're not normally interested in watching it, we want the people to watch it because it's a fun game regardless.
Yeah. Right.
So putting a premiere out is one of the ways we do it.
A big part of that too, Nick, is the players. One of the things we discovered, especially when filming live games, which we used to do, is if you don't have players that are engaged and talkative and talking you through what they're doing and making jokes, boy, is that a boring game. I think the worst game of 40K, and I've told this story before, but the worst game of 40K I ever played was a tournament game where the guy never said a word to me other than these guys are firing at this is firing at that. And then and he was crushing me. And at a certain point he goes, this is about the time people just concede. And I go, and I was the funny thing was he's wrong. I was just about to, but when he said that, I was like, no, we're going the distance. And I
drag this out.
I made him suffer through that whole game. And at the end, I had one Plague Marine champion left, and that was it.
Just run around the Plague champion.
It's a Pyrrhic victory for you, though, Carl.
Just getting under his skin.
Yeah, we've had to do a lot of work and do a lot of retrospective afterwards. Like, okay, so I think your delivery here was great, except for I think this part was maybe felt not as engaging. I think if you do this, that'd be different. So we've changed. One important thing is we stand at the table. Many people do stand, but I think it gives a little bit more energy to the table. Another thing is we look across from each other rather than beside each other. So there's a bit more of that sport aspect of you're looking across from each other rather than just looking at the table.
Get the head to head.
And the edited aspect of it allows us to cut out a lot of the boring stuff.
Sure.
A lot, so it makes us look like we're always engaged.
That is very true, but I think that's an important piece too. You guys set out to do 40K in 40 minutes, and I know you made the joke to me that 49 minutes is still in the 40-minute mark, and I think ours went over 50, but which leads me to there was a lot of stuff we filmed that doesn't make it in there. And you I think I said something to you and you're like, oh, I'm really sorry. And I was like, no. It's the video's great. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. I'm curious what happens to the remaining footage if you guys store that or use it later for other things, or it's just garbage at that point.
There's not a real lot of time to do a lot with that extra footage. We were recording, as it said, usually 5 hours of footage. That is across 7 cameras.
I was gonna say per camera, that's 35 hours of footage.
So that's a lot of footage, and we're not gonna use most of that.
Yeah, of course.
So to be honest, the stuff that doesn't make it in the video, we usually just trash it. The stuff we do keep is the cinematics and the cool photos of the armies and stuff like that. That stuff's always useful for the stuff, for promotional purposes, or just new army comes up, or to be excited, or some montages later in the game. But there's just not a time to do anything more. Yeah. We do an extended cut for our membership and patrons, and the cut it's we add what we call the aftermath, which is basically a post-battle discussion. So there's a bit more depth to it, so it's a longer cut to it. So there's a bit more, so there's more purpose to the early access, so it's not just the same video. But a lot of it, there's a lot that has to reach the cutting room floor, and sometimes you got to cut out whole things. You're like, man, this is a good joke, or this is a good bit, but you can't keep everything.
No.
Or it's not 40 minutes.
I think that's completely reasonable, right? And listen, if there's one thing you and I both do, it's talk a lot. So, there's a lot to be said for trimming up what our discussion.
Yeah, and it's a lot different now that we have editors. Like when we first started, I was doing all the editing, and so I could just keep what I wanted, right?
Yeah.
But now that we have editors, sometimes I'll get the edit back from the editors and be like, "Hey, what about this bit?" It's like, "Yeah, I couldn't fit it in." I was like, "Well, maybe you could have. Maybe you could have just done this part here." And just, of course. So sometimes there's that bit of that back and forth of trying to figure out what they think is the more optimal purpose of it. But
I asked you this question while you and I were talking up there previously, and I think I got the answer right, but. Because I reiterated it earlier in the show, but I asked you, is this still all a lot of fun, or is it just sometimes just work? And what's your kind of take on that?
I mean, it is a job at this point. We've made ourselves a job. I'm working at it full time, which is sometimes insane.
It's the dream,
that I get
right?
to do this full time.
That's awesome.
Like I'm literally playing games full time. But what I think what a lot of people don't realize is I'm not just sitting there rolling for fun. Like there's deadlines. I have to make sure that these edits get done or the filming gets done. Or when I was filming with you, Carl, I was also the shooter.
Yeah.
So that meant I was also making sure that all the cameras were running properly, that none of them were cutting out or doing weird things. I was double checking that all the audio was working properly.
Right.
In addition to making sure my army was played properly, in addition to double checking, because it's part of my job is to make sure that that the guest is experiencing a good time too. Do anything I need to make sure that happens to make sure that is a good experience for you as well, to make sure all those things. So there's a lot of things that go into it that is, work.
So what I'm hearing is he did all that and still crushed me, Josh.
Wearing a lot of hats. One of them's the commissar hat up top.
But it's what I wanted to do, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to get into film. And so I wanted to make stuff that people wanted to watch. And that's what I'm doing. And that's so fulfilling.
Yeah, I'll bet.
The amount of comments we get of people just being encouraged by what we do, is insane and frankly humbling. And the fact that people want to support us, we are just regular schmucks. None of us are really experts at any of this.
Yeah.
None of us know what we're doing, but apparently people want to support us and they're encouraged by us, and that's really, really impactful and amazing and keeps us going. When we see those awesome comments.
The other exciting thing there is, this plays into, not that I want PlayOn Tabletop to end, but at some point, if you move on to something else, you have something you can show to say, look, this is what we were doing, and you can see the quality of what we've done.
It's really cool to feel like we've done something that's impacted that many people. And
sure.
Impacted, say, battle reports. Even at the very least, we changed battle reports. I don't think we're going back. I think if you want to succeed at battle reports, I think you have to really make sure you're approaching it with a unique take and that you can communicate something great.
Sounds very similar to what we've said about people who come and say, "Oh, I want to do a podcast." How are you going to do it different than what everybody else is doing? Right? If somebody's already doing, and we would get a lot of times I'd see people say, "Well, I want to do something like the independent characters," but I'm gonna stop what you're saying. Do your own thing. Find what that is and latch onto it. And you guys have set the bar incredibly high. There's other channels out there, Tabletop Tactics, a couple other guys. There's some
great channels
that are doing some incredible stuff. Man, I got to tell you, I actually very much appreciate how you open the door to this hobby for other people and usher them in, right? In a very visual medium, and you've done a fantastic job at it. So
it was really thank you very much, Carl. Because to be honest, you are my hobby hero, as people would say. But you and your podcast started me in 40K.
The guy who never gets any painting done.
Fair enough. But the very next game we released on the channel, I got to play against someone else who he said that I was the reason he got into the channel. Yeah. So that's crazy.
Yeah.
It's all cyclical. Yeah. Well, you guys are definitely doing something really unique, and it shows, and you're having a great time doing it, and the production value that you are bringing to it is truly impressive and inspiring. So
well, thank you. It's an exciting job that I get to go to do something new and cool. I don't think I've ever gone to work and said, "Oh, I don't want to go to work."
Right.
I don't think I've ever got up. I don't think I've ever got up in the morning and saying, I'm not looking forward to going to work today.
That's a good job.
That's a really good job.
Yeah.
Josh and I are trying to find that job right now.
Like there is work, and there's a lot of it sometimes. There's a lot of late nights, and sometimes I'm incredibly tired and need breaks, but it's awesome.
Good.
And so thank you for everyone that supported us.
No, I think
it's just
I think that's incredible. It's an incredible story, and you and Tech and the rest of the guys there and JT and you guys made it a very enjoyable visit. I also appreciate you putting me up in your place. It was super nice of you.
No worries. Thanks for coming and joining with us.
And your wife, Laura, yeah, putting up with me, so I appreciate that as well. So.
No worries. She's actually putting the kids to bed right now, so I can do this. So
all right.
Double thanks for her.
Well, listen, we'll let you go, but I really wanted to thank you for your time, and I can't wait to come back up there. And next time I'm gonna send Josh up there. He's a better player than I am. You'll see. He picked on me, Josh. Go deal with him.
Send it in the muscle.
That's right. We'll send Justin up there.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, you didn't face my Tau, I gotta say.
Yeah, I'm telling you. If you wanted,
if the opportunity presents itself, I would obviously love to go there and just see the production.
Yeah, you'd have a professional looking at a professional. Well, listen, if you brought your Tau, if you really didn't want me to like you, you could bring out the Tau.
Well, that's why I didn't play my Tau. I thought, well, I gotta give a chance for this guy to like me. So,
yeah. All right. Well, listen, thank you so much, Nick. We appreciate it. We appreciate what you're doing, man. Keep up the good work.
Thanks, Carl. Appreciate what you do too.
All right. All right, and so now we're here with Adam Abramowicz, and you represent the Army Painter, but we wanted to bring you on the show for a number of reasons. So, First off, you're a gamer, and we were just talking before we started recording, and you actually used to live in my town, which is not a big town.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny.
It's very popular in the other industry I used to work in.
Oh, it was bicycles, right?
Specialized Bikes.
Yeah, Specialized Bikes was
here.
here.
That's funny.
Yeah,
I was at Bell Helmets for 15 years.
Yeah. You're speaking Josh's language.
Yeah, that's funny.
So,
world.
So you made a move to go from your previous role to the Army Painter. But before we talk about that, let's talk a little bit about how you got into gaming and 40K specifically, and what led you kind of down this path.
So actually, my beginnings, it's a funny story. I was probably 11 or 12 years old, visiting my cousins they were in northern upstate New York at the time. Mm-hmm. And I would go stay for a week or two, and we read, I think it was The Hobbit, and built Middle Earth out of Legos in their basement. And nice. At the tail end of one of the trips up there, we went to a mall, and there was a Games Workshop store. And in the front window, we saw elves, we saw, humans, we saw orcs, right? So it was kind of like what we were trying to do with the Legos in the basement, but actual much cooler models. Right. Not that Legos aren't cool. And, for years we would buy a model, get some models for Christmas, paint them up and show them off every time we saw each other. And then high school comes about, and, I was an athlete in high school, and that's not something that back then you normally you didn't let that nerd flag fly.
The streams can't cross.
Yeah. Back then they couldn't.
High school especially.
They can now.
Which is, it's so, and yes, that's the amazing thing. But and I still dabbled a little bit. I'd paint in the basement, went to college. And actually I was always Wood Elves. I was always fantasy. And 40K didn't draw me in really, but then they had released Tau. And that was new and unique. And I remember the Devilfish. And my girlfriend at the time was away for the summer, and I needed something to do. So I bought some models, started painting, did that off and on. And then it was after a long bike ride about 15 years ago. We were hanging out in a pool, and a guy that we were with grabbed a pool noodle and jumped into the pool and screamed that he was a Bretonian knight or something like that. And it was kind of like the record scratch went off in my head. I'm like, what did you just say? And the next day I was at a workshop store, bought some paints, bought some models, and ended up doing my own podcast, playing competitively, coached Team USA at the WTC, and found my way to work for the Army Painter after working as kind of a consultant in the industry for a little while.
Nice. Okay, so you find your way to the Army Painter. Can you tell us a little bit about the operation, like how big is, how many people? Because my understanding is it's not particularly large, although we do know Kat, who's now part of your group.
So we're growing, and we're growing at a rapid pace. I mean, when I started, I think I was employee 17, and that was 6 years ago.
Okay.
Today, I believe we have under 90 employees total.
Wow.
We just officially, I think I can air this, but you guys know Kat, you know Caleb too. Yep. I just got his employment contract, so he's going to come join and work for us starting January 1.
I was chatting with him yesterday, and he was telling me, "Oh yeah." I'm like, I'm not going to say anything if Adam doesn't.
It's I mean, I've learned from him, you know, and it was a perfect choice. But I think today we're just under 90. We have had over 90, especially at like the height of the pandemic. Things were really booming. We were one of the only paint companies that could produce at the time.
Interesting.
And we really, in a matter of months, went from being like, I would say, a 35-person company to a 90+ person company.
That's huge growth.
Yeah.
But even so, that's still small. I mean, for a company, that's still small. And a lot of times I think
we're still a small company.
Yeah. People perceive from outside, you know, we see your products on shelves in stores, you know, you have a presence online clearly. And I think sometimes there's a disconnect between how big people think a company actually is, right? Games Workshop, as large as it is not actually that big, you know?
Right. So. And they're a lot bigger than we are.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
From a personnel point of view and even a revenue point of view. But I think there's just always kind of that thing where you think that a company is always this giant conglomerate that some people can't get over. But at the end of the day, no, I mean, we were literally a mom and pop shop. I mean, the founders were friends. They worked together at Workshop. Our CFO and right now our interim CEO is our founder's wife, who is the most fantastic person in the world. You know, it started as a family business out of a shed, legitimately. You know, Bo and Jonas, they worked their butts off to really have a strong presence at retail because they understood retail very well. Jonas was a former retailer. He's now retired from the company.
Yeah.
So, you know, they really put a solid foundation in place for them to now grow in the digital world where we are at today. You know, hiring myself and kind of stepping into social media and, you know, content marketing and partnerships. So it made my job very easy coming into this small company 6 years ago to kind of start with the social media. And we've only hired nothing but rock stars since then that are really talented at what they do.
Right.
But yeah, we're not that big of a company at the end of the day.
Okay. So
I like to say that we punch above our weight class.
I think that's legit. And I mean, look, I think we've said on the show, but I'll say here just for the sake of being transparent, you sent us a collection of the Speedpaints, to which Josh and I have played with a bit now. This is the Speedpaint 2, the new set. Yeah. And first off, the range of colors is incredible. There is so many.
90 colors, 89 colors.
That's a big box, yeah.
And I've used them through my airbrush a lot. You know, Caleb came over. We were working on some Night Lord stuff, and he kind of opened my eyes to a way of using them. Then I've since done a bunch of terrain with them, some other models with them. Yep. And I mean, I have you on because I'm super excited about this particular paint line. It has changed the way that I do some of my painting. And I mean, to be fair, the contrast paints did as well, but this just had so many different colors. Gotta tell you, I love the dropper bottles, and I love the bead in the dropper bottle for the start.
That agitator,
so good.
That's a game changer.
So good.
Yeah,
so good.
All the paints come with the mixing balls in them. I just have to say, so I've been a fan of your show since I got back into it.
Oh, thanks.
I was listening to you guys, and then Paul Murphy, because I ended up being on the Forge Narrative show for a little bit.
Yeah, I'm friends with Paul.
Talked about you guys. Yeah, and we met briefly at LVO, I think probably about 7 or 8 years ago.
Yeah.
I think it was.
Yeah.
But I've always been a huge fan. When I heard that you guys were coming back, was like, oh, this is great. And then Kat's
Again.
like, would you like me to make an introduction? I'm like, yes, of course. Anything I can do. I mean, you guys have such a great show and, a strong following, and I love everything that you guys do. So it was very easy for me to say, take some paints. I mean, that's the fun part of my job, is the people that I look up to, I get to support them.
Well, they are getting used, and we've talked about them quite a bit because I'm such a fan. Josh, did you want to ask any questions at this point, or you want me?
I don't, nothing specific other than, I'll rave about the product a little bit too. I have not used them to the same extent as Carl has, and I am excited to play with the shooting them through my airbrush. But what I have done is just a little bit of slap chop with some resin printed minis for RPG stuff, and was really happy with the color saturation, the range of colors, how many things you can kind of even mix together from there. And it's a really impressive line. And so the metallics, I was pleasantly surprised for a speed paint metallic, how well they cover, and that just kind of metallic sheen that's in there is truly impressive.
It was Caleb that told me about the metallics. He says, have you tried the metallics yet? And I said, no. And then I just tried them with my Black Legion. And I'm like, oh, wow, these are really, really good. So
when we started developing those and we said, why don't we try and do it? Because that's how a lot of this stuff starts, is can we do it? Nobody else is doing it. We kind of have this motto, be first or be better. That's always our attempt when we're doing a new product, right? And first time I used it, I was like, this is very strange. It's not the visceral reaction that I had to it was like, this is not like metallic paints that I've used before. Mm-hmm. I hate painting metallics. I've never enjoyed painting it. I was always let's paint it black and dry brush it and avoid painting gold. And I have painting awards. Like it didn't work for me. Now I really enjoy using it. And I knew going into this and starting the promotions, talking to content creators and talking to media who are going to be reviewing the product, so what's up with the speed paint metallics? And I said to them very honestly, I said, I think it's going to be very polarizing. I think that, half the people are going to say, it's not for me. I like the way that I paint metallics. And the other half are going to absolutely rave about it.
Sure.
And what's been interesting as of late is that I'm getting people like Caleb coming to me and Vince Ventruella saying, what is this stuff? Where did this come from? I don't understand it. It's really cool. And that's what I love about creating products that are different, because people will then find different uses for it that maybe they weren't initially intended. And just really put it to use. And it's amazing to see what hobbyists of all skill levels can do with the range.
And so just for clarification, because you had a speed paint line that came out in competition at the time, I felt, with Contrast. Then you kind of went back to the drawing board, re-engineered this. I saw that you brought out Brent and a couple other people to give them a try and get their opinion on them. What was the impetus for switching from 1.0 to 2.0?
So there's a lot. So number one, the number one goal that we had going into it was to expand the color range. Because as soon as we launched it, the 23 colors with the medium, retailers and customers are like, when are we going to get more? We thought that was all that you could. It's such a highly pigmented range. Like, you're going to get a lot of samey. You see that when you get to 90. There's some that they're very similar, close, but they have light nuances, right? Especially in the blues and the turquoises, right? But people want options at the end of the day. And if you can make it easier for them, they have to mix less, and that's a better product. But at the same time, there was this hotly debated characteristic of the original formula. The actual term for it is called pigment flotation or pigment floating, because they are so richly pigmented and highly pigmented. Yeah. And the amount of medium that you use is much less, and you're not using a chalky covering medium with it. It's transparent medium. The pigments become more fragile, and what happens is when that resin cures, pigments dry on top. What I don't think a lot of painters realize is that, your yellow, red, green pigments, you think that they cover bad because they don't have enough pigment. They actually have a lot of pigment because they are weak pigments. So you need more of that in there, and they're in a base that's not conducive to coverage, right? So these paints have even more pigmentation in them, which can make them finicky to work with, and yada, yada, yada. So pigment is actually drying on top. So if you don't let it sit, or you live in a humid environment, If you tried to paint white over top too soon, you would get bleed through. So the pigment would work its way through because it's being reactivated because of the floating pigments. Some people found this a useful tool. Dana Howe, which is why when we endeavored to do this, we wanted her insight on it because she used this as an advantage. I think that 90% of the people that bought Speedpaints, to be honest, really liked it because it was our best-selling release ever.
Yeah.
You know, and doing some analytics after the fact, which maybe I wish we would have done before we jumped into 2.0, but I'm not, because the product's great. It's hindsight.
Yeah.
But it was an interesting study to realize like people were actually very happy with it. And at the end of the day, with Speedpaint 2.0, we said, well, can we stop it from reactivating or reduce the reactivation element of it and just make it a versatile paint? Because what we envisioned with Speedpaint 1 was to make the best one coat paint solution. I think what we saw with contrast is you had a range that is very good, but they all kind of did different. They were almost like 4 different categories of contrast.
And I think people see this when they say, well, the blue doesn't cover as well as the yellow, blah, 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 you know, and they notice the different
certain colors. Yeah. Reds and browns.
Yeah.
And that was kind of our main inspiration is, okay, well, what if we were able to do this where they were consistent from front to back? And I think that's what a lot of people really loved about Speedpaint is you could understand what was going to happen with all of those 23 colors.
That's really interesting.
But doing so, you use different properties and you're using different materials to make it cover so smoothly without the coffee staining, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
You know, those were all things that we wanted to retain when we went back to the drawing board. Can we do all of that, but now make it a great base coat paint,
right?
Or a great glaze paint as well, because that's what other people were using it for. So
right.
What we really wanted to try and do, if we're going to expand it to 90 colors now, because that's what people are demanding, they want more colors, we might as well take this opportunity to see if we can make this better for more people. And that's I think we nailed it personally. I mean, I'm very proud of it. And
I've used probably, I mean, 15 or 16 of the paints at this moment. And you hit an interesting point that kind of resonated with me is I've seen all of them behave the same way. All the ones I've used. So I've, you know, so far I've really enjoyed using them. Yeah, quite a bit.
I'm happy to hear that. Are you using it more like old Rob the Honest Wargamer slap chop style?
Yes.
Or?
Yeah, very much so. And then Caleb came over and kind of showed me a way to improve upon that using not necessarily just grays and blacks and whites, but then using similar colors as your underlayer to get a smoother kind of finish. And it's worked.
I'm going to give you a trick to try out one time. Next time you're painting a cape, right? Next time you're painting like I'm doing one right now. I don't know. You probably can't even see it, but
okay. Yeah.
So that's the lion, right?
Yeah.
So that's like legitimately a very simple airbrush zenithal over black.
Yeah.
Right. Some stippling because I like a little bit of texture, and speed paint over top.
Yeah.
And then to get the smooth highlights as I'm kind of working things up, I mix in a light acrylic with the speed paint.
Okay.
And you get just the smoothest, almost like heavy glazes.
Huh.
And I did that with the old paints too. I mean, it's like the Night Haunt models were a great test for that because it's like, oh, well, I can blend these together and you just get the smoothest blends.
Interesting.
It's a fun hack. I like doing it.
Yeah. I mean, there's just so many, I'm learning a lot from the paints, so they've been incredibly helpful. Josh, you want to talk about the different lines?
Yeah. So Army Painter obviously making a huge splash with Speedpaints 2.0 in the market there, but you also have a wide range of things with the color primers, the dips, things like that. You want to just talk about the line a little bit and
yeah, of course,
kind of walk us through it.
Yeah, I mean, when I started with the company, we were really focused on the spray paint dip done, right? That's the method that
was the first time I became aware of you guys.
That's why we're called the Army Painter, right? It's all about painting armies as fast as you can. Now, obviously, we sell to everybody. It's D&D and RPG players, Star Wars Legion, whatever. But back then it was the dip was the first product.
Yeah.
Color primers came after that, which made sense. Like you're saving time. It's a 2-in-1 base coat primer in one. choose the majority color. And then it was like, I think 24 acrylic paints or 26 to start, which expanded into 124 with washes, metallics, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, we've grown to become a comprehensive hobby company. Basically everything that you need to assemble, prime, paint, and base your models, and now with different paints. So at the end of the day, we're a paint company. We had the Warpaints range. We are moving to the new Warpaints Fanatic range. And I'd love to get you some of those to try out because they are truly mind-boggling. I've worked for other paint companies in the industry. I've been painting a very long time. I've used just about everything, and I really think these are special, and I'm excited for everybody to try them.
What's the differentiator of the Fanatic line?
The Fanatic is basically a high performance premium acrylic paint. We're not just the affordable, approachable company anymore. We're still pretty affordable though. But they are let's just put it this way. There's 300 to 700% more pigment in the Fanatic paints. Right. Wow. I told you pigment actually makes paints act funny, right? It's fragile. Yeah. What makes paints break and separate. Well, they're also super high covering. From front to back, similar to the Speedpaints. We want them all to behave the same way, from black to white, yellow, red, orange, green, and everything in between. And you can get nearly one coat coverage with almost every paint in the lineup. In fact, I think that they cover better when you thin them down.
Interesting.
So this is going to be a paint range that's going to make painting easier. Somebody who grabs their first miniature, they get their Cobalt Mini at a paint and take, and they say, I think this Cobalt would look really cool with a yellow robe. Mm-hmm. Well, that was everybody's first turn off to painting when first time they had to paint yellow. Or certain oranges, greens, right? Now it's actually a satisfying experience. It's almost like that speed paint experience where you're getting that instant coverage, not the shade and shadow. But where this is really going to push is with Warpaints, I think we're a lot of hobbyists' entry point as a paint brand.
Yeah.
They see us next to, other brands that are more expensive, other brands that maybe don't have as much stock available on their rack. They look at our rack and they say, oh, that looks really pretty. Oh, and it's only $3.75 a bottle. Let me try that. Or that set is a great deal. Let me jump with that.
Yeah.
And as hobbyists progress, just like any other hobby, sport, as you get better, you buy better equipment. And they would move on to other brands. And we heard that often. And people are always rooting for us. But now I think that we have a range that will keep those people around. I mean, you're going to see, I'm not going to put money on it because I'm not a betting man, but I think that you're going to see some awards won in years to come, especially even next year, that were models painted with Fanatic.
Interesting.
So that's just the key differentiator. I mean, it is a high performance paint range, but it has everything that you love about Army Painter behind it. It's it's going to be well stocked. It's going to have a great retail solution. You're going to be able to buy it. We've built it in triads. I don't have any of I only have the prototype bottles. Do you want to see them?
Yeah, sure.
So it's just for an example, what's your favorite color?
Blue.
Blue. Yeah.
All right. So let me grab, excuse me guys.
Blue's always been my favorite.
So this, I believe, is the saturated blue or the bright, vibrant blue triad. It's 6 colors.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They need to be shaken up a bit, and these are the old bottles, so they're a little bit more opaque. But essentially, they're designed, it's 6 colors. It's a flexible triad. There's 4 triads in progression.
Okay.
If you're only using 3 paints. But, Army painters who want super bright contrast will probably use something at the end, something in the middle, and something on the bright end of the spectrum, right?
Yeah. Right.
And then painters who are doing a little bit more, like I'm painting the Lion's armor right now. I'm using the full progression because it makes it easy. I don't have to mix paints and worry about.
You just go from one bottle to the next, and and if you have to go back and try to match that later, it's that much easier,
very
right?
Easy. Exactly.
Yeah.
Are you wet blending through that transition, or are you using a thinner?
I am more of a feathering type of blender.
Okay.
I do a little bit of wet blending, but I think I just get too fidgety. So feathering tends to work best for me.
Interesting.
I like a bit of texture on my miniatures. I like to see brush strokes because it makes it feel like it's been painted.
Sure. Yeah.
I haven't won a Golden Demon, so I don't know. I don't have a pot to stand on. But
as my friend Ed told me about Formula One, he's like, do you even know what you're talking about? I was arguing with him about something. It turned out I was completely wrong. This is fascinating. And the thing I love, honestly, and just jumping back to that speed paint line again real quick.
Yeah.
The thing I love about it is it just makes it quick for people to get models on the table. In a hobby where it can be somewhat daunting when you buy a bunch of gray plastic and then you're like, oh my God, I got to put this together. I remember opening when I created my Tyranids army, and I bought it all at once, and then opening the plastic and going, oh my God, what have I done? And then
I've never painted a couple units for an army at the start. It's always 2,000 to 3,000 point investment, and I've got to get it all painted as fast as possible. Then I'll add on later.
Yeah.
I feel like model count has gone up too in 10th edition. So having a fast solution to get you painted on the table.
Have to. It's just everything's moving to MSU, and it's
again.
I like
back to MSU.
Yeah,
that was the king in
5th edition all over again.
That's right.
Yep.
I'm an advocate of having a good theme to your army, even if you're playing competitively. So that I like a nice representation of scale throughout. Like if there's not at least one monster, I'd like to have two at least. A couple tanks.
Listen,
it's not an army to me.
We talked to Nick from PlayOn Tabletop.
Art of War?
PlayOn Tabletop earlier in the.
Oh, PlayOn. Okay.
Yeah. And I went up to Vancouver and played him, and he stomped me. Now, mind you, if you watch the video, everybody who watches it like, God, your rolling is really bad. I'm like,
dice work.
Yes, I am aware. But a number of commenters were saying, how come he's playing Thousand Suns he doesn't have Magnus? And I'm like, because I wanted to make an army that was he can't be at every fight. I wanted to make an army that was
Magnus, you need Fate Weaver, you need a Lord of Change.
Yeah.
You got to bring the big boys out.
I wanted something that was representative of a whole bunch of stuff, so I had a theme. And, so I didn't have Magnus and 8 exalted sorcerers, So I'm all about theme. And that theme was roll 2s.
Are you going to be at LVO? Are you going to be at LVO this year?
I am not.
You got to see my Hussar themed Imperial Guard army.
Oh my God.
Oh, neat.
I just got
20 to 30 cavalry with Vic, you should check out
they're nasty.
They're
nasty on the charge.
Victoria did a really good job.
Yeah,
they're a lot of fun.
Yeah. So, well, listen, Adam, thank you so much for coming on, and as we play with these more, I'd love to have you back on and show you kind of some of the examples of what we've been doing. On our Facebook group, we have I just finished painting up the Ash Waste Nomads, and that was all speed paint stuff.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna go check it out.
Yeah, so I've been
thank you for having me on. This is like a hobby, hobby bucket list item checked off.
Okay.
Got to sit on independent characters.
Well, it won't be the only time, so we'll have you back for sure. We'll have you back for sure.
I have a note on my official notebook, and if it makes it to my notebook, that means it's important. I'm gonna make sure that I get you a complete set so you can play with the rest of the colors. And after we get the Fanatic release out, I would love to get your opinion on them as well.
Yeah, I think Josh would probably be the best person to mess with the Fanatic
dive
stuff.
into those, especially.
So
anyway, I've been using a lot of Scale 75 over the years, so I'd be really curious to see how they compare. And I hate their greens because they just the gel medium in there is too thick. So I'm really excited to hear that you've got the consistency kind of figured out across color ranges in greens, especially to take that for a test drive.
And I think that's an interesting comparison you just made, Josh, to Scale 75. I think that's when I think of Scale 75 paints, I think of kind of a upper echelon level of paint that you're buying. Like, hey, look, you're really serious about painting it at this. That sounds like the Fanatic, that's the market you're kind of shooting for with that particular line.
We're shooting for everybody with Fanatic. I mean, we're shooting for hobby fanatics, we're shooting for game fanatics, and we're shooting for paint fanatics. I mean, we really took an approach of, that's exactly what we did. Thomas, who's our lead studio painter, he was a representative of the showcase painters. Bo, who, founder of the company, built the army painting company. He Danish national team member, likes to stomp faces. I've never beat him before. He was a representative of the gamers. And then I kind of came in as the hobbyist guy because I do a little bit of both, right? Like I like to paint nice things sometimes too. But, at the end of the day, I like to play 40K and beat my opponent's face in. So we worked with people that were representatives like we did with the paint development team in Speedpaint, but it was much bigger.
Nice.
We worked with a lot more people, and it was a little bit more behind closed doors because this was such a big release.
Nice.
But yeah, that was our main goal. It's for fanatics of all skill levels and different backgrounds in the hobby.
Yeah, awesome. That's exciting.
All right, Adam. Well, thank you so much for your time, and we will talk to you again soon.
Thanks so much, guys.
Time to close out the show, Josh. And
here we are again.
Again, I want to thank both Adam and Nick there for joining us. Great couple of guys, and it's always great to meet other people in the hobby that share kind of the same passions you do. And so I'm super stoked to have met both those individuals. And all joking aside, we do got to get you up there to declare victory for me.
Hey, you
picked on me, Josh.
Hearing how much Nick loves Legions Imperialis, maybe that's what I'm going up there for.
There you go. Oh yeah, yeah. Take it to him, Josh.
And I play Thousand Suns, which people like. So
that's right.
And maybe by that point, I'll have Magnus.
That's right. Anyway, thank you so much for listening to the episode, episode 228. We really do appreciate it. If you're looking to engage with us more, we have a Facebook group, which is always full of great stuff and great people, very positive minded. What else do we got?
We've got a Patreon. We've got a YouTube channel. We got Discord, Facebook.
Yeah. All kinds of good
email.
Stuff. Email. Josh at theindependentcharacters.com. Carl at theindependentcharacters.com. No A in independent. And people still get bounces, it's been a very interesting time going up to Vancouver, coming back, it was fascinating. So, again, if you're interested, please check out PlayOn Tabletop. We'll provide a link if you haven't already checked them out. I'm sure you have, but if you haven't, we'll provide a link in the show notes. They're great guys up there, and they're doing some amazing stuff. So make sure you take a look. And again, I can't speak highly enough about these speed paints. Pick up one or two, give them a try, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think you will. So
I've been painting for 30 plus years and have my recipes really dialed in, and I was still blown away with the ease of which they are and the results that they get. Some of the colors, especially that are historically more involved to get to that level, is just it's really that easy.
It's so funny when Adam's like, "What's your favorite color?" Blue. I was like, not even a second hesitation there from me. I know exactly.
Here's 8 of them.
Yeah. Here's 8 blues. I think Reaper was doing like the triads, like they would have 3 colors of, the fading, but like, man, I'm pretty excited about those. So anyway, let's wrap it up. So, Josh, thanks so much for joining us. I'm glad we did this remote. It came out, I think, pretty well. But I'm looking forward to having you in studio for our next episode, which I think we're doing our Christmas end of year special.
So your year in review.
Year in review. Oh boy,
wrapping up the year.
Oh buddy, it's
been a busy year. That's gonna be a long episode.
I'm telling you, let's just say I'm glad I saved all the emails from GW. So.
That one's going to take me a lot of time to compile the video assets for.
Sorry,
all the stuff.
I'll try to gather all the photos for you. Anyway, until next time, this is Carl.
This is Josh.
And we're coming to you from around about the Astronomicon, where we let the professionals do the quote-unquote battle reports.
And where agency and engagement rule the day.
There you are. All right, we'll catch you next time. This episode of The Independent Characters is protected by the Creative Commons license. If you have further questions as to its use, you can find information on the front page at theindependentcharacters.com.